if I said you have a beautiful body, would you hold it against me? Would you treat me like the devil tonight?
One of the most played country wedding songs of the 1980s was recorded by a woman who had trained to be a physical education teacher for a film she was not starring in a genre she had not grown up inside.
If you have a beautiful body, would you hold it against me?
A song that reached #1 simultaneously on the country chart, the pop chart, and the adult contemporary chart in 1981 was written by a man who had spent his first 4 years in Nashville driving a taxi cab, waiting for anyone in the industry to take him seriously.
If I was dying of thirst, would you flow in love?
And the record that sits at the top of this countdown, the one that established the defining female voice of an entire decade, described a feeling so specific and so private that most people who heard it on the radio were certain the song had been written directly about their own life. The 1980s produced a particular kind of country ballad that has never quite been replicated. Not because the songwriting was necessarily better than what came before or after, though in many cases it was, but because a specific combination of factors converged in that decade to create something the genre had never managed with quite this consistency before.
Well, you're nobody called today.
Production had become sophisticated enough to give songs genuine cinematic scale. Radio had extended its reach far enough that a country ballad could simultaneously anchor a honky-tonk jukebox and a suburban dinner party without anyone finding that strange. And the artists recording these songs were, in many cases, people who had lived enough to know what they were singing about.
You can sing along if you want. Late last night.
Some of these records were made by artists in the middle of their own upheaval. Some were written in a single sitting by songwriters who couldn't have explained afterward how they did it. Some were passed over, doubted, or nearly shelved before audiences found them and refused to let them go.
She hung up when I asked her name. Well, I wonder.
Every song on this list reached the people who needed it. What follows is the full account of how each of them got there. This is Spotlight Archives. And this is the decade that broke your heart. Beautifully, repeatedly, and on purpose.
Don't make small talk. He said,
if you love the stories behind the songs, the forgotten details, the heartbreak, the scandals, and the moments that changed country music forever, subscribe to Spotlight Archives. Because around here, we don't just remember the songs, we uncover the stories they left behind. Now, let's begin with number 10. Number 10, John Conlee, Rose-Colored Glasses, 1978.
for staying, maybe my...
Before John Conlee ever stood in front of a Nashville microphone, he spent his working days preparing the dead for burial. He was a licensed embalmer in Versailles, Kentucky, a fact he has mentioned in interviews without any apparent discomfort, and he spent his evenings as a radio disc jockey, spinning other people's records and waiting for a version of his own life that had not yet arrived. He was 32 years old when rose-colored glasses changed his circumstances.
I believe it would be the best.
That age matters. Country music in the 1970s had a tendency to reward youth and punish patience. The standard trajectory ran through Nashville in your early 20s, a small deal, a struggling start, and gradual momentum if everything broke correctly. Conlee followed none of that. He came late, from an industry that had nothing to do with music, and he arrived with a voice that sounded like it had earned everything it was about to say. Rose-Colored Glasses, co-written by Conlee and Gene Thomas, was built around a metaphor so simple and so precise that it felt inevitable once you heard it. A man who understands, completely, lucidly, without any real self-deception, that the relationship he is holding on to is damaged and probably beyond repair. And who, despite that understanding, cannot bring himself to see it any other way than beautiful.
good lines, the ones I used to hear.
The specific self-awareness inside the delusion is what gave the song its emotional punch. The narrator is not foolish. He knows exactly what he is doing. He is choosing the glasses anyway.
You need me when you prove so many times.
The song reached number 5 on the Billboard Country chart and announced Conlee as a commercially significant new presence, the working-class plaid shirt singer who did not use production gloss to dress up emotional honesty and who critics recognized, with some accuracy, as a man whose image was not a constructed commercial persona, but an accurate portrait of his actual life.
That it ain't true.
He was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry in 1981. He continued charting through the decade while maintaining his Kentucky farm and resisting every industry suggestion that he modernize his sound or his appearance. The embalmer turned disc jockey who came to Nashville a decade later than the industry expected, produced a catalog of recordings that wore their origins plainly and never apologized for any of it.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Number 9, Dan Seals and Marie Osmond, Meet Me in Montana, 1985. Dan Seals arrived in Nashville carrying a biography that the country music establishment was not entirely sure what to do with. He was the younger brother of Jim Seals of Seals and Crofts, the soft rock duo whose Summer Breeze and Diamond Girl had been fixtures of 1970s adult contemporary radio. Dan himself had spent most of that decade as one half of England Dan and John Ford Coley, a duo whose 1976 hit I'd Really Love to See You Tonight had made him a recognizable name in pop circles. By the early 1980s, the partnership had dissolved, and Seals found himself making a deliberate pivot toward country music in Nashville, a move that required him to essentially rebuild his professional identity from a different foundation. Meet Me in Montana, the duet he recorded with Marie Osmond, was a song built on a geographic promise. Two people separated by circumstance, making a specific arrangement to find each other in a place the lyric associates with openness and relief, the particular kind of romantic hope that requires a destination to feel real. Osmond's clear, bright soprano and Seals' slightly weathered baritone created the kind of vocal chemistry that the best country duets depend on. Two voices that sound like they have genuine history together, even when the listener knows they are meeting for the first time on a record. The song reached number 1 on the Billboard Country chart in 1985 and won the Country Music Association Award for Vocal Duo of the Year, an outcome that simultaneously validated both artists in their crossover ambitions and confirmed, for Seals specifically, that the format he had moved toward suited his voice considerably more naturally than soft rock ever had. He went on to score 7 number 1 country singles between 1985 and 1991, a run of commercial consistency that placed him among the most reliable male country hitmakers of the late decade. He died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in March 2009 at 60 years old. The soft rock veteran from McCamey, Texas, who reinvented himself as a country artist in his mid-30s, spent the second half of his career making some of the most emotionally direct ballads the decade produced. Meet Me in Montana was where that chapter properly began. Number 8, Oak Ridge Boys, Elvira, 1981. The chain of events that produced one of the most joyful recordings in country music history began with a man nearly running a red light. Dallas Frazier was driving through East Nashville in 1965 when he glanced up at a street sign bearing the name Elvira. He had been developing a rhythm in his head for some time, an R&B inflected groove that needed a word with specific syllables to complete it. The sign provided exactly what he needed. He wrote the song. His own recording went nowhere. Rodney Crowell recorded a version years later that also failed to find an audience. The song sat in the catalog for 16 years. When the Oak Ridge Boys, Dwayne Allen, Joe Bonsall, William Lee Golden, and Richard Sturban recorded it in 1981, they were a vocal harmony group with deep roots in Southern gospel, a tradition they had maintained through years of chart success in that format, before pivoting to mainstream country in the mid-1970s. They brought to every recording a four-part vocal architecture that most country acts could not replicate, and to Elvira, they brought something additional. The arrangement was built around a specific production decision. Bass singer Richard Sturban's contribution, the now legendary bass vocal that became both the song's musical hook and its live performance centerpiece, was designed to function simultaneously as a comedic element, an audience participation moment, and the most identifiable single sound in the entire recording.
Lips like cherry wine.
The result reached #1 on the country chart, crossed to #5 on the pop chart, and sold 2 million copies. Those sales matched, at that point in history, only the Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton duet Islands in the stream among country singles. Elvira won the Oak Ridge Boys their first Grammy in the country category. They had previously won 4 in gospel, and claimed Single of the Year from both the CMA and the ACM simultaneously, a double recognition that rarely falls to the same record in the same year. A street sign glimpsed through a windshield in 1965, 16 years of the song going unrecorded, one bass vocal that became a national sing-along. The arithmetic of a hit record is almost never what it appears to be from the outside. #7, Bellamy Brothers. If I said you had a beautiful body, would you hold it against me?
Have a beautiful body, would you hold it against me?
1979. Howard and David Bellamy grew up on a cattle farm in Darby, Florida, the sons of Homer Bellamy, a musician who had spent years performing regionally without breaking through nationally. The brothers absorbed music the same way they absorbed everything else about their upbringing, as part of the daily work of a rural Florida life that included crops, cattle, and a father who played guitar in the evenings.
Out and say what's on your mind.
They had already achieved something the industry tends to call a one-hit wonder before anyone realized they were something more. Their 1976 single, Let Your Love Flow, a gentle acoustic country pop record, reached #1 on the pop chart and introduced them to a national audience without giving either the brothers or the industry any clear sense of what would come next. What came next was a double entendre so perfectly engineered that it has never been equaled in the genre's history.
If I said you have a beautiful body, would you?
If I said you had a beautiful body, would you hold it against me, was a line that operated on 2 levels simultaneously and completely, as a romantic compliment delivered with obvious sincerity, and as a punchline understood immediately by every adult listener within range of a radio speaker. The construction was clean enough that it could be played on any format, in any context, without anyone being able to technically object to it, while every listener understood exactly what the second meaning offered.
Like the devil tonight.
The song reached #1 on the country chart in 1979 and crossed into the pop top 10. It became one of the most covered country compositions of the period, recorded by artists across multiple genres who recognized that its central premise, a man so uncertain of his reception that he wraps his approach in an elaborate layer of deniability, was both genuinely funny and emotionally accurate about how people actually behave when attraction makes them nervous.
Die dying of thirst, would you flow in love come quench me?
The Bellamy brothers went on to set a record for the most #1 singles by a duo in country music history, a distinction that stood for over a decade. Howard and David have continued performing together well into the 21st century, which makes them one of the longest-running original duo lineups in the genre's history.
If I swore you were an angel, would you treat me like the devil tonight?
Two brothers from a Florida cattle farm who wrote one of country music's most perfectly constructed double meanings, and then spent 4 decades proving the joke was never the whole story.
We could talk.
Number 6, Sylvia, Nobody, 1982.
Well, you're nobody called today.
She was answering phones. Sylvia Kirby Allen had grown up in Kokomo, Indiana, in a musical family, playing guitar by age 7, and carrying the specific kind of Nashville ambition that gets formed early and held quietly for years.
It's true, but I can love you like nobody can.
The path from that ambition to the studio had run, as it does for many people in that city, directly through a desk job, filing documents, transferring calls, performing the administrative work of an industry she was trying to enter through a door that had not yet opened.
Even better.
When she was working as a receptionist at a Nashville music publishing company, when producer Tom Collins heard her singing somewhere in the building and signed her to RCA Records almost immediately. The timeline between that moment and her first recording session was short enough to feel implausible in retrospect.
You can sing along if you want. Late last night.
Nobody, released in 1982, was a slow, piano-driven ballad delivered with a breathless intimacy that made it sound less like a performance than a confidence shared between the singer and a single specific listener. The opening line, "I ain't got a dime, but what I got is mine," established a narrator who was offering something the lyric treated as more valuable than material security, a love that was entirely and exclusively available to one person, without division or hesitation.
Is it coming back to you?
In a decade crowded with country love songs about devotion, Nobody found a register of quiet desire that most of its contemporaries could not locate. The vulnerability was unguarded, the intimacy was specific, and the production, sparse enough to keep the vocal at the center of everything, refused to dress up what the song was doing in anything that might dilute its effect.
After you, oh, the fact is what you say.
The record spent 2 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Country Chart, crossed to number 15 on the all-genre Hot 100, and became one of the most requested country crossover singles of 1982. Radio stations played it multiple times in a single afternoon. Jukeboxes carried it long after the chart run ended.
It's true, but I can love you like nobody can.
Sylvia eventually stepped away from the music industry to raise her family and pursue a career as a visual artist, a second creative life she has described in interviews as equally fulfilling as her recording years. The receptionist who became a crossover star left behind a catalog and a title track that most people continued to know word for word long after they had stopped remembering her name.
Even better.
Nobody remains exactly what 1982 made it. A song that sounds, every time it plays, like it is telling you something in private.
You're nobody called today.
Number 5, Anne Murray, Could I Have This Dance, 1980.
Could I have this dance?
Anne Murray did not set out to become a country music star. She set out to become a physical education teacher. Born in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia in 1945, a small coal mining town whose primary exports had historically been miners and hockey players, Murray had trained as a phys ed instructor before a 1964 appearance on a Canadian television program called Sing Along Jubilee redirected her trajectory entirely. By 1971, she had become the first Canadian female solo artist to win a Grammy Award, claiming Best Female Country Vocal Performance for a Love Song and establishing herself immediately in the first rank of the genre's female voices. Could I Have This Dance arrived in 1980 through the unlikely vehicle of a John Travolta film, Urban Cowboy, the Travolta and Deborah Winger production that made country music fashionable for an audience that had never previously engaged with it, needed a song for its final scene. A wedding dance. A moment where two people make a public commitment that the film had spent its entire running time complicating, and the song carrying that scene needed to make the weight of the commitment feel real without overwhelming the moment with drama. Wayne Holyfield and Bob House wrote "Could I Have This Dance" specifically for that scene. When Murray recorded it, her warm, unaffected soprano gave the lyrics something that a more theatrical vocalist might have compromised. It sounded like a genuine promise. Not a performance of sincerity itself, offered plainly. The song reached #1 on the Billboard Country chart, crossed into the Pop Top 30, and won the Country Music Association Award for Single of the Year. Murray's Grammy for Best Female Country Vocal Performance, her third overall, confirmed the recording's place among the decade's most significant, and across the following years, Could I Have This Dance became one of the most played wedding songs in North America, used at first dances by couples who may never have known its film origins. Murray was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2023, more than 4 decades after this record had established her international standing. The physical education teacher from Nova Scotia, who became the first Canadian woman to win a country Grammy, recorded the most played country wedding song of the 1980s for a film she was not starring in. As we move together. She made it sound like the most natural thing in the world. That is the specific gift she brought to every song she recorded, and it has never been adequately explained. I want to know which of these songs still means something to you. Tell me in the comments, because some songs don't just belong to an era, they become part of our lives. If the stories on this list are landing differently than you expected, subscribe to Spotlight Archives. Every week, there is more history like this waiting, and most of it has never been told this completely. Number 4, Lee Greenwood, God Bless the USA, 1984.
Stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
Lee Greenwood was born in Los Angeles in 1942 and spent most of his early career performing in Las Vegas casino showrooms, playing keyboards, singing across multiple genres, dealing blackjack between sets, and developing the kind of all-purpose entertainment versatility that casino work requires and Nashville does not particularly reward. He was 38 years old before he made his first serious attempt at a country recording career. He signed with MCA Records in 1981 with essentially no country radio history, a background that read like a showroom performer's resume, and the specific challenge of convincing Nashville radio programmers that someone with his origins belonged in their format. He wrote God Bless the USA in November 1983. By his own documented account, he completed the lyric in approximately 30 minutes after sitting down with a specific intention to write a patriotic song that could be embraced across political and regional lines, one that described pride in American identity through the language of ordinary gratitude rather than ideological argument. The freedom to raise a family, the men and women who defended it, the land stretching from the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee.
Forget the men who died, who gave that right to me.
Released in April 1984, the song reached number 7 on the Billboard Country chart, a number that dramatically understated its cultural reach. It was performed at the 1984 Republican National Convention. It played at Super Bowl halftime shows. It was broadcast nationally following the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster in January 1986. It became a fixture of Gulf War radio in 1991 and returned to near-constant airplay following the September 11th attacks in 2001. By multiple documented estimates, the song has received over 1 million radio plays across its lifetime.
From Detroit clear to Houston and New York to
Greenwood re-recorded it multiple times as its cultural significance expanded, and each subsequent national moment gave the lyric a new layer of context its original recording could not have anticipated.
stand up next to you and defend.
The Las Vegas casino performer who completed the lyric in 30 minutes created one of the most broadly deployed cultural touchstones in modern American history. A song that has now accompanied more than 4 decades of national pride, national mourning, and national argument about what those words actually mean in practice. Some songs outlive the moment they were written for. This one has outlived several. Number 3, Crystal Gayle. Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue, 1977.
Brown eyes blue.
Her name at birth was Brenda Gayle Webb. She was the youngest of 8 children born in Paintsville, Kentucky, and she grew up watching her most famous older sibling, Loretta Lynn, on television because the age gap between them was large enough that she knew Loretta first as a country music star before she fully knew her as a sister in the ordinary sense.
When you're gone, I'll just cry.
That particular origin carries its own weight. Crystal Gayle spent her early career in the active and deliberate effort of becoming someone distinct from the most famous country music family in the world. The decision to record under a stage name was part of that project. The visual identity, the extraordinarily long hair that eventually fell below her knees, the carefully considered aesthetic that separated her from every other female country artist of the era, was another part. She was constructing a professional self that could stand independently of a surname that carried enormous cultural freight.
Make my brown eyes, don't make my brown eyes.
Richard Lee wrote, "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue," as a study in a very specific kind of devastation. Not the acute grief of fresh loss, but the slower, stranger experience of feeling a change moving through you before the ending has officially arrived. The moment when you can sense your own eyes shifting color, from whatever they naturally are to the blue of impending grief, while the person causing the change is still technically present.
Don't make my brown eyes, don't make my brown.
The metaphor was unusual, an aesthetic image built around emotional physics that should not have worked as literally as it did. It worked completely.
Don't make my brown eyes, don't make my brown.
Gayle recorded it for her 1977 album We Must Believe in Magic, in a production that incorporated pop instrumentation alongside country structure, a combination that became the sonic identity of her commercial peak. The song spent 4 weeks at number 1 on the country chart, reached number 2 on the all-genre Billboard Hot 100, and simultaneously topped the adult contemporary chart.
Just what I had.
It won Gayle the Grammy Award for Best Female Country Vocal Performance and the Country Music Association Award for Single of the Year. The album it anchored became the first album by a female country artist to go platinum, over 1 million copies sold.
And don't make my brown eyes blue.
The youngest Webb sister from Paintsville, Kentucky, spent years constructing a professional identity separate from the most famous name in country music. Then she made one of the most commercially successful crossover recordings the genre had ever produced.
Just what I had.
The song and the image became inseparable in the cultural memory of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Decades later, both remain exactly as vivid as they were when the record first played. Number 2, Ronnie Milsap, Smoky Mountain Rain, 1980. Ronnie Milsap was born in Robbinsville, North Carolina in 1943 and was blind from birth. His grandparents initially attempted to conceal this from him, a documented fact from Milsap's own accounts, believing that telling him would somehow harm his development. He was sent at age 5 to the Governor Moorhead School for the Blind in Raleigh, where he learned multiple instruments simultaneously and developed a musical versatility that would eventually make him one of the most technically accomplished recording artists Nashville had seen. The classical training gave him precision. The personal history gave him permission to use it without restraint. Smoky Mountain Rain, released in 1980, was built around a physical and geographic specificity that most ballads of its era deliberately avoided. A man standing in rain at a truck stop in Asheville, North Carolina, watching faces, looking for one specific face among the people moving through a place designed for passage rather than arrival. Weather as emotional atmosphere, mountains as the shape of loneliness when it has a landscape to inhabit. Milsap's piano-driven vocal delivered the lyric with the controlled precision his classical training had given him, and the emotional weight that only a man who understood darkness from the inside could bring to a song about searching for something you cannot see. The record spent 2 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Country chart. During the early years of the decade, Milsap received the CMA Award for Male Vocalist of the Year and, in a consecutive year, the CMA Award for Entertainer of the Year, a simultaneous peak of commercial and critical validation that very few country artists of any generation have achieved. He was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2014. In multiple interviews across the years since the recording, he has identified Smoky Mountain Rain as the song fans most frequently cite as having changed something specific in their experience, capturing a feeling they had never been able to put language to before they heard it. The man born blind in the North Carolina mountains wrote a song about standing in rain and searching for a face he could not find, and he made an audience that could feel exactly what that particular darkness looks like. That is not a small accomplishment. It may not have a name.
Remember that, Jamie?
#1, Reba McEntire, You're the First Time I've Thought About Leaving, 1983. She learned to perform at her grandfather's funeral. Reba McEntire was 10 years old when she sang at that service in Chalky, Oklahoma, a detail from her own documented biography that says something about the specific kind of emotional territory she was prepared to enter before most performers her age had considered the question. She grew up as the daughter of Clark McEntire, a 3-time world champion steer roper who raised all 4 of his children to rodeo before any of them seriously considered a music career. She performed with her siblings as the singing McEntires at county fairs and rodeos through her teenage years and was discovered in 1974 singing the national anthem at the National Rodeo Finals in Oklahoma City, brought to the attention of Red Steagall, who helped her secure a recording contract with Mercury Records. The rodeo background mattered. It produced a singer who understood how to hold the attention of an audience that had other things to look at, in spaces where competing noise and motion were part of the environment. It also produced a performer who did not flinch from difficulty. You're the First Time I've Thought About Leaving, written by Beth Nielsen Chapman, one of Nashville's most gifted ballad writers, gave McEntire something that 1983 country radio had not yet heard in quite this form. The song describes a moment of recognition from inside a marriage that has drifted, without any single dramatic incident, past the point of genuine happiness. The narrator is not describing abuse or betrayal or any of the events that country songs typically use to justify departure. She is describing the quiet, private terror of looking across an ordinary morning at someone she married in good faith and realizing, for the very first time, without warning and without invitation, that she is considering what life without him might feel like. That first time is the whole song, the guilt of having the thought, the impossibility of unthinking it, the nausea of recognizing that a feeling you have never experienced before has arrived and will not be reasoned away. No dramatic confrontation, no betrayal scene, no resolution that offers the listener anywhere comfortable to rest. The record reached #1 on the Billboard Country chart. It arrived at the moment when McEntire's commercial trajectory was accelerating toward the decade-long dominance she would achieve through the mid-1980s and early 1990s. Chapman's lyric gave her something emotionally specific to inhabit, not the generalized heartbreak of most breakup songs, but a precise internal state that required an artist willing to make the listener feel it, rather than simply describe it. McEntire won 4 consecutive CMA Female Vocalist of the Year awards beginning in 1984. She built a legacy across subsequent decades that extended into film, television, and theater. She became, by any reasonable measure, the defining female voice of an era. But You're the First Time I've Thought About Leaving is the song that established, for anyone paying close attention in 1983, what specifically separated her from every other female country singer working in that decade. The ability to locate an interior emotional state, private, complicated, and not entirely comfortable, and make every listener who had ever been anywhere near that feeling recognize it as their own. The rodeo rider's daughter from Chalky, Oklahoma, made country music's most private kind of grief feel universal. That is the hardest thing a song can do. She made it sound effortless. Closing 10 songs. 10 artists who came from cattle farms and coal towns, from funeral homes and casino showrooms, from receptionist desks and rodeo arenas, and who collectively produced a decade of country ballads that reached places in the human experience that most music never finds. What made the 1980s country ballad different from what came before or after was not production technology or chart strategy, it was specificity. The best records from this era were not trying to describe a universal feeling. They were describing one precise, particular moment. The first time you thought about leaving, the rain on a mountain in Asheville, a face you cannot find in a crowd, and trusting that the precision itself would create the universality. If there is a song from this decade that has a specific place in your life, a memory it carries that nobody else would know about, the comments are the right place for that. These songs deserve to be remembered in full, not just as hits on a chart, but as the moments in real lives where they actually landed. And if this countdown took you back to a song, a memory, or a moment you hadn't thought about in years, subscribe to Spotlight Archives. We're digging deeper into the stories behind the music, the artists, the secrets, the heartbreak, and the history that never made it onto the record sleeve. The songs may be timeless, but the stories behind them deserve to be remembered. Spotlight Archives will be back. The history of this music runs deeper than any single countdown can hold, and we are not even close to finished.